Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Noise. I'm David Zhang. Trump's current moves, with multiple lawsuits in place, is actually to begin the next process. He has a few plans, but before I begin, I just want to discuss with you what type of person Trump is. First of all, he is actually a very unpredictable person. If you really take a look at the last 4 years, there have been many decisions he has made that are irregular to a normal way of politics, and therefore no one can really anticipate what his next move are. This is a good thing, especially for strategizing, but not so good for analyzing it. If people like us can easily guess Trump's next move, then that defeats the purpose of strategies. Remember, Trump is playing a different level of chess. However, we can still make some educated guesses just from the current situation. Here are the tactics that Trump is currently using. The first one is loop into the deep state and making them expose themselves. The second one is the Supreme Court ruling election cases. 3 levels of legal attack is the third strategy. And the fourth one is using behind-the-scenes operations. Let me break down each for you here. First tactic is what I would call a showing calculated weakness. We don't know how long has Trump known about the corruption in this voting fraud scheme, or when he began to realize it. But I can definitely say that Trump did not just realize this would occur on election day. In fact, I think the executive order from 2018 on the foreign influence was a sign indicating that Trump has been preparing for this at least since 2018. Now, Trump may be using the election as a way to expose the deep state and then draining the swamp. First, with the executive order in 2018, which declared a national emergency and would allow investigations into foreign influences on voting interference. And then the second is that the presidency itself. Trump knows that even with a second term, as long as the deep state is there, after his departure, the root of the problem is still remaining. He needs a solution, one that would solve it once for all. Tactic 2 is using the Supreme Court as a battleground. In reality, I don't see Supreme Court being the main point of turning the tide. The simple answer to this is because it takes way too long for a legal process to occur. As we approach December, something quick must be done. And therefore, though winning Supreme Court cases would be great for Trump's team, it is mainly a distraction for the real battleground. My recent analysis says this is where the lawsuits I would categorize as civil suits in the name of the Constitution. In other words, this isn't what Trump is relying on completely. It just takes too long. Now, this brings me to the third tactic, using all 3 levels of courts in the United States. This one is actually pretty simple. The first one Giuliani spearheads is the path to the Supreme Court through district courts and then the appeal courts and then go up. Here you saw many lawsuits being dismissed, often from individuals other than the Trump's team, filing those lawsuits. The goal is to reach the federal Supreme Court as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Lin Wood spearheads the people's lawsuits. Their lawsuits are all about voter suppressions, individual cases of fraud evidence, poll watchers and mail-in ballot issues in the local area. This path aims to gain the small advantages that would expose trails of voter fraud scheme. And Sidney Powell spearheads the criminal prosecution path that occurs at the state level. For example, she sued the governor and the secretary of state of both Michigan and Georgia. The goal here is to expose state-level corruption and its foreign ties to these voting companies. Here the effects are to expose that to a public level and expose the deep-tied corruption that has been running in each state. When all 3 levels converge, it creates the overall effect of showing the public that, look, there is a massive corruption and a systemic voter fraud occurring, to a point where you cannot ignore the evidence. But these are just the upfront acts. And Trump is working also behind the scene, or secretly, with an unknown plan. We have some idea, but it's not the complete picture. According to multiple people we have covered in the past, there seems to be a program called the Kraken in the Defense Department that was created and supposed to be used for cyber warfare, potentially against countries like China with its hackers. but Trump may have utilized it to defend against voter fraud. Trump is creating a specialized operations team in the US military as well, through Acting Defense Secretary Miller. This Spec Op team is preparing for something to happen in the case of an extreme rioting or worse. This is actually the worst scenario, because it will come down to a weaponized conflicts potentially, or coups. And then Trump also has some levels of decisions on the Frankfurt operation. We don't know exactly what took place, as it most likely was a military secret. And our previous analysis was that it was either taken by the CIA first, and then the US military intervened, or the operation was conducted entirely in place of the CIA. Regardless of the process, as of now, it seems that Trump's team holds the server and is in the process of obtaining information from those servers. The reason why I wanted to explain these 4 tactics is because it gives you the context as what is to happen next. In fact, despite these tactics, the next move from Trump is never predictable, and that is a good thing again.